Ukraine Security Service, known as SBU, has released the interrogation of a Russian serviceman involved in the execution of 9 Ukrainian prisoners of war in Russia's Kursk region. According to the SBU's investigation, in October 2024, Skoblev, a serviceman in the Russian Pacific Fleet's 155th Separate Brigade, together with his accomplice, carried out a commander's order by leading an assault unit that took 9 Ukrainian Defense Forces soldiers captive. The prisoners were forced to strip and lie on the ground face down and were tricked into believing that they would be kept alive to be later exchanged. The commander instructed me to calm them down, to convince them that a car would arrive to take them away for a prisoner exchange, but in reality, to shoot them, Skoblev explained. After they calmed down, our commander became hysterical and demanded via a walkie-talkie that we shoot them dead, which I and my accomplice did, Skoblev went on saying. He then described how he and his accomplice Ivanovich killed all 9 Ukrainian prisoners with standard-issue firearms. After that, the Russian assault group collected the mobile phones and radios of the deceased and continued combat operations, Skoblev said. A week later, Sergei Skoblev was captured by Ukraine's defense forces. At first, he denied any involvement, but SBU officers gathered the necessary evidence, forcing him to admit his guilt. The crime constitutes a grave violation of the Geneva Convention and other international documents governing the treatment of prisoners of war. A notice of suspicion is being prepared. The perpetrator will face appropriate severe punishment.
9 солдат вооруженных сил Украины были нами пленены. Я, соответственно, запросил у командира, своего непосредственного командира МОНИТУ, инструкции, как дальше поступить. Он приказал успокоить их, усыпить их бдительность, сказав, что сейчас приедет машина, что сейчас они поедут на обмен, что все будет хорошо, но на самом деле расстрелять их. Соответственно, мы их усадили в одно место, вот таким образом, ну они тогда еще сидели. Раздели их для нашей безопасности, провели досмотр, здесь же рядом было сложено их оружие. Соответственно, когда они были успокоены, в это время по рации командир МОНИТУ все продолжал истерить и настаивать на том, чтобы мы произвели расстрел. Что, собственно, я и мой соратник Иваныч и сделали. Я стоял с этой стороны, произвел расстрел этих 4. Иваныч стоял с этой стороны, произвел расстрел этих 5. Соответственно, после расстрела были собраны там мобильные телефоны, рации, и мы продолжили движение в сторону укрепленного пункта в начале лесополосы.
Ukraine is Europe's first line of defense. Therefore, European countries should increase support for Kyiv to stop Russian terror, including starting to train the Ukrainian military to use Taurus missiles. This was stated by Roderick Kieswetter, a member of the Bundestag from the Christian Democratic Union. He emphasized that comprehensive support for Ukraine is much more beneficial for Europe. We can and must do more to stop Russia's terror and better support Ukraine. Germany, for example, can immediately begin preparations for the use of Taurus, and we can altogether mobilize resources to provide the Ukrainian population with energy. Europe needs Ukraine within the 1991 borders, the deputy emphasized. He further emphasized that Europe can stop the terrorist state Russia only together with Ukraine. Ukraine is Europe's first line of defense. It is currently in one of its most difficult stages, exacerbated by Russia's targeted and brutal attacks this winter, as well as because Europeans have waited too long for the US to act. And key states like Germany are contributing too little relative to their GDP, are too indecisive, and constantly resort to pseudo-negotiations, Kieswetter said. The German MP emphasized that comprehensive support for Kyiv is much more beneficial for Europe, and Ukraine's victory is a key element for maintaining the EU's geopolitical and geo-economic relevance. If Ukraine is surrendered, organizing security against imperialist Russia will become many times more difficult and expensive for us. Supporting Ukraine by all possible means is much more economically beneficial for us as Europe and Ukraine's victory is important if we, as the EU, want to remain a relevant geopolitical and geo-economic player, Kieswetter emphasized. At the same time, he explained to his partners that US President Donald Trump is not interested in Europe's security. He is pursuing his own interests. But we, as Europeans, should be concerned when the most important country in Europe from a security policy perspective, Ukraine, and its strongest army are bombed to the ground because it harms our security interests, Kieswetter emphasized. Against the backdrop of these calls, the transfer of missiles to Ukraine and strikes against Putin's army are not ruled out. As reported earlier, German Federal Chancellor Friedrich Merz said that he did not rule out the possibility of supplying Taurus missiles to Ukraine, but this option remains on the table. The politician emphasized that the Ukrainian military needs to train for at least 6 months to master this system, and such training has not yet begun. Experts also emphasize the need for active military and economic support for Ukraine, in particular the provision of Taurus long-range missiles and other key defense tools. Looking to future prospects, analysts emphasize, for the stability of the region, Europe needs to reduce delays in aid to Ukraine and support it in building a modern defense capability to strengthen the EU's position on the world stage.